Many Canadian home educators wonder where, how, and when to fit Canadian studies into their geography and history. I'm here to give you an answer and to provide resources to make it easy and fun for both you and your family. My name is Donna Ward, and I struggled with this very problem. I solved it by finding all the best living resources, nonfiction and historical fiction. Resources that would delight the imagination. I organized the readings into a chronological order of study. And over the years, I've added geography, Aboriginal peoples, government, and many more resources for all ages and for many topics. In this video, I'm going to work through a scope and sequence and suggested resources for various grades, but know that all ages can enjoy them. In a homeschool setting, teaching history and geography multi-grade is fun, interactive, and easier for you. With this scope and sequence, if your children are older and you feel they've missed some content, you can easily fast-track using the resources. In my situation with 4 children, I repeated the studies about every 4 years. Regardless of the topic, even if we were doing ancient civilizations, I would have my children always do one Canadian historical fiction book report, and we did read-alouds to add layer on layer of Canadian knowledge. So here we go, starting with grade 1. In grades 1 to 3, you want to focus on Canadian geography with some history. Geography is foundational to all other Canadian studies, and you can review and add to map work at the beginning and middle of every school year. Introduce your children to Canadian culture and heritage with information about symbols, governments, freedoms, and biographies of historically significant Canadians. Young children have very little personal history to understand timelines. That's why celebrating the seasons, special holidays, and highlighting birthdays helps them see patterns in time and helps them understand continuity and change. This lovely series for grade 1 helps children learn the historical thinking skill of continuity and change. We still have phones, but how has communication changed over time? They can start a little map work with my very first primary map book. Children can learn about community with the workbook Our Community, and I'm just searching for and adding videos to our resources section for young children about community, people, and places. In grade 1, field trips to local community places are perfect. Canada, My Country is a fun, easy curriculum which builds the first foundation of geography for young students. We bundle living books to delight the imagination of young learners. Meander your way through the Animal Bundle and the Provinces Bundle, as if you were taking a trip rather than reading cover to cover. These help children learn natural and human geography. Maxine Trottier writes really interesting biographies in the Biography Bundle, and you can teach your children why these people are historically significant. Early graders should learn world geography as an overview, as you look together at oceans and continents, unique features of the land and wildlife, world religions and missions, and culture as it relates to food, festivities, and people groups. In our homeschool, we used library books, travel videos, recipe books, and sponsored children in developing countries, and we read a lot of international stories. The workbook My World in Maps and the World Map Floor Puzzle for young children are quality and fun resources to use in your study about the world. Between grades 2 and 5, your children should learn about Canada's Aboriginal people. Canada's Natives Long Ago takes your children on a study with the 7 cultural classifications of groups based on variations in lifestyle stemming from the unique geography in which they lived. Children learn both history and geography as they study how first peoples survived by what the land gave them. Projects and crafts are naturals with this topic. In Canada's Natives Long Ago, I tried to include as many First Nations voices as were available at the time of printing, such as this true story of a young Inuit boy, who had to protect the cache of meat from a hungry polar bear on a winter night. And for the story living book lovers and the crafty people, I've got a host of resources to make this one of the most informative and fun studies you've done with your kids. For all my books, it's really great to access easy links to get all the best online sources that go with the topic you're studying.
The winds create surface patterns. These always point in the same direction.
Between grades 3 to 6, students should learn about government. We've got a number of resources that will help you there, and the Guide to Canadian Government Learning modules have been the most popular and use multiple mediums, including the book Who Runs This Country Anyway?, followed by an interactive learning module. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees the following rights. Our democratic rights give us the right to political activities such as voting or even running for office. Our mobility rights means quizzes can be repeated and printed for school records. Again, this is a great time to use easy links, with a time-saving collection of the best of the web embedded on my site to avoid other YouTube distractions. Discovering Canada's Government is a more detailed study of the government and good for older kids. And I always recommend John A. Birth of a Country, one of my favorite videos.
Have you heard from George Brown?
I wasn't expecting to.
Don't be flippant. You've ruined everything. You've destroyed the country.
We don't know that.
We would have heard from him if the answer were yes.
Between grades 2 to 5, your children can do a formal study of Canadian settlement. Courage and Conquest, Discovering Canadian History, offers resources for all the different learning styles. It covers chronological events up to Confederation. In your study, cover a full overview, planning for further topical research in older grades. Include the Prime Ministers at intervals throughout the study. Include historical fiction for personal and read aloud every year, even when you're doing other topics of study, so that your students really get that foundation of Canadian stories. We did a timeline marked in centuries starting at about 1000 AD. Courage and Conquest has reproducible timeline pictures the students can color and place on their timeline or in a notebook. When the students are in grades 6 to 8, you can repeat Courage and Conquest and do it all together as a family if you have all the grades through the elementary years. In the older grades, students can study more topically and add to what they learned the first time through as an overview. I'm working on creating learning modules for these older grades specifically to teach the historical thinking concepts. Sign up for my newsletter on my website if you want more information as the modules become available. Sometime between grades 4 to 8, children can learn about the ancient civilizations. We simply use the Kingfisher or Usborne History Encyclopedia for our studies. You will cover Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. And the encyclopedia illustrations are great for your own personal timeline. In tandem with the ancient civilizations, it's always wonderful to do a history of the Old Testament. Mark your timeline in millenniums. Old Testament history is the books Genesis to Esther, and the major and minor prophets fit into that history. Your kids will benefit from learning the main Bible stories and characters in chronological order in combination with maps and posters. You might cover ancient civilizations in one half of the year, and then the last 500 years in the second half of the year. When you do world history, since our country was originally settled by the people of Britain, France, and Spain, learning the history of those countries brings light to cause and consequence as it affected North America and specifically Canada. So you want to cover the last 500 years, the explorers, the monarchs, and the conflicts, You'll cover the Middle Ages and the Crusades. You'll be hard-pressed to include a history of all the nations, so I suggest focusing on our founding nations, as well as your own family's heritage. In the middle grades, students should do a Canadian provincial study, as well as study their home province. This sets the students up for the geography study they will do later in high school. Geography province to province meets these needs. Students will learn about symbols and geography, about population and the unique culture of each province, as well as industry and resources. You want your students to get a real feel for the uniqueness of each province and the people who live there. In fact, if you could take a trip, all the better. But you can armchair travel as you romanticize the stories, use imagination, make it fun, read poetry, watch travel videos, look at picture books, and read fiction to understand geography and culture. If your family has the great opportunity to travel the land, they'll have so much more awareness if they've done their armchair travel ahead of time. And as I said earlier, students in grades 6 to 8 or 7 to 9 should do another History of the Settlement of Canada, up to Confederation. This is a great time to learn the Prime Ministers in more depth. The course should be chronological, but with more topical emphasis. Some of the important topics are the fur trade, the Loyalists, the War of 1812, the railway, the RCMP, the gold rush, and of course the Prime Ministers. Courage and Conquest can be used again, as well as Canada, a People's History DVDs. Enjoy fiction, but mix it with research. In grade 9 or 10, students should complete a Canadian geography course. We offer the textbook Making Connections in both print copy or as an e-text option. And then between grades 10 to 12, students are required to complete a Canadian history course of the 20th century. I wrote a course titled Canada in the 20th Century. All the assignments are based on the 6 historical thinking skills. This course is a hybrid. Course materials are in a consumable student notebook. Assignments and answer keys are downloadable as Word docs or PDFs, and there is an online resource collection to enhance the program. You can go to the product page on the website to see a video explaining this course in more detail. For more information, go to dawnaward.net or check out my Facebook page for specials and free resources.